Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today our lecture is about life cycle assessment. We are now uh, studying the ISO series, and we are also focusing how different kinds of procedures and documentation is being implemented in order to achieve specific certifications. So, for example, documentation for ISO 14001 certification will be linked with the EMS, Environmental Management System. Then we have another certification like ISO 14040. Then we have ISO 14023, 22. All these have their own implication. Today we will be focusing on life cycle assessment. What actually life cycle assessment means, what it describes, what it covers. Today we will be talking about that. Basically, in any industry, when we are going to design a specific product, or we are going to provide some specific services, there is an opportunity that we determine the environmental performance of that product or that service, both. So if we talk about products which are being prepared, manufactured in a typical or specific industry, then we have a procedure through which we can determine the performance, environmental performance, and that procedure is given to us through this ISO 14000 documentation, that is ISO 14040, and this relates to LCA, life cycle assessment. So as we will proceed in our today's lecture, you will observe that this what are the basic steps to conduct this kind of assessment, and then what is important to obtain this certification, and then what is the significance of obtaining this certification. So actually we should know what is the purpose of conducting this life cycle assessment, because it has different grades. It is not a simple process to conduct LCA. So we should be very clear what are our goals, what is the scope of our LCA. Then once we know our scope, then we can proceed accordingly. Then we can plan our different procedures, how to obtain the data, how to maintain the inventory, what kind of inventory is required. All these things will be followed in that case. But first of all, we should know what we are going to do with our this assessment certification. What is the target? Why we need it? It has different grades, as I told earlier. It is not specific to a predefined flow chart, but it has different depths. So particularly talking about the product, once it is in a design phase, at that time you can conduct an investigation, you can conduct a follow-up, you can conduct a review, so that you know whether this product is what kind of result this product is going to provide us. Then in the end, once we have prepared and manufactured that product, then at that final stage we can conduct a detailed life cycle assessment, which will be covering all the aspects regarding its environmental performance. Another important thing about LCA that it only focuses the environmental performance. There is nothing else which should be included in this life cycle assessment. What other can be included? For example, economy, social impacts. All these things are not included here in our LCA. So let's start something about life cycle assessment, what it is, why it is important to us, how we are going to implement it. So just very briefly, it is actually a very detailed topic, but we will be covering it just knowing the significance and the basic procedures. So introduction to life cycle assessment, international standard ISO 14040. Now this ISO 14040 is designated for this LCA. So what is life cycle assessment? Let's define it. Compilation and evaluation of the inputs, outputs and potential environmental impacts of a product system throughout its life cycle. So what it explains, once we prepare or manufacture a product, we know what are the ingredients, we know what the procedure we have followed, we know the processes which took place in its manufacturing. We also know the energy utilization. So all these are different steps, starting from the raw material, then processing, then operation, then energy utilization, and then in the end we got the final product. This is the normal procedure, this is the normal flow chart of any product. So once we know this flow chart, now we are going to work out the environmental performance of each and every step one by one, and then in the end we will be evaluating, we will be assessing whether this product is going to be environment friendly or not, what age it is going to obtain, how long it is going to sustain. So we must know the material being utilized as a raw material, then that raw material must be of good environmental quality and performance, so that this LCA can show us a good performance of the product. So basically the raw material which is being utilized obtains a key role in deciding the age and performance, environmental performance of any new product being manufactured. Is it clear? Then now once we have prepared the product, now we will move forward. Now we will check, we will evaluate how long this product is going to sustain in our system, what its implications will be on the environment, whether it is going to have a positive impact on the environment or gradually it will decrease its positive impact and then start its negativity. So because the material is going to change after some time, the material is not going to continue with its performance, it is going to change its qualities, characteristics. Then we need to properly define what raw materials were used in the manufacturing of this product. That's why it is very important to maintain the inventory. So what actually inventory means? Anything being added up in the system, added up in the process, added up in the manufacturing flow chart. So let's go through it. The process split into life cycle stages and LCA phases. So life cycle stages and LCA phases must be proportionate. So what are the stages? Stages are portions of the product life cycle, and phases are the portions of the life cycle assessment process. So phases are related with the assessment, stages are related with the product life. So for every stage of the product, we should have a mechanism to investigate and assess the life cycle of that product, which will be in the form of phases. So please differentiate between the stages and the phases. Stages are for the product life cycle, phases are for the life cycle assessment. Both should be in relation with each other. That's why, moving forward, here we have some phases versus stages. So what could be the stages? Let's talk first about this stages portion. First of all, the extraction and upstream production, and then transferring of the material, and then manufacturing, and then utilization, and then the final disposal. So all these phases are included in the life cycle of the product. Now we are going to link it with our phases for the assessment. What it is? Interpretations. So like goal and scope. The goal and scope for what? For conducting LCA. As talked earlier, there are different grades and different depths up to which life cycle assessment can be conducted. Then we have inventory analysis. It's again important, how to obtain the data, what is the frequency of collecting the data about the product, and then something about the assessment, how this product is going to behave, what is its impact. So that's how we will be evaluating the components of the inventory one by one, so that we can define the positive or negative impacts on the environment. Now, what are our principles of LCA? So guidance for the product, process, or constructed element selection. So there are, first of all, guidance for product, process, element selection. So we need to have a clear description what is called an element. Then for any product there will be a specific unit which will be declared as an element. Let's talk about our product first. Our product can be a machine, our product can be an instrument, our product can be an appliance, our product can be a building, a road, a dam, a structure, whatsoever it is. We are going to evaluate its performance, its lifelong performance, how long this product, including the structures, will be sustained in our system, will perform at its best while it's working. So all these things need to be explored in the life cycle assessment process. Then for every element we need to have an inventory. We need to maintain what is the source of that element, then what is the quantity of that element, then how much energy was consumed, what is the source of that element. So everything is included in the inventory. Inventory is actually the list. in which we are incorporating every available detail about the elements and the materials. So materials are actually the elements. Then entire life cycle environmental burden between stages and processes relative to a functional unit. What is a functional unit? It's important. It is a quantified amount of function obtained from the product or process. So light bulb functional unit might be 1 million lumen hours of light. Then we have a bus functional unit, might be 10,000 passenger kilometers traveled. Then it covered more in the modules. Then only environmental consideration is addressed. As we talked earlier, we will be only talking about the environmental performance. No economy, no social impact and other impact, nothing will be included in LCA, life cycle assessment. Only the environmental life of any product or a structure or a unit or a service will be included. So please don't forget that life cycle assessment is not limited to the product only, but it is also for the service as well. So any service which you are providing, for example, if we talk about a university or a department or a institute, we are talking about the services provided by that institution or organization, anything which we are talking about. So we need to include everything about that service if we are going to have a life cycle assessment for a service. So for example, in a medical institution, in a medical health unit, we are providing a health facility to about 50,000 persons or any number of persons of that area. In that case, we need to have an assessment how much feasible it is and what is the grading and what is the level of that service which we are providing in the form of health. So this is something which we are going to describe. Then iterative process where each phase uses the results of other phase. And of course, when we have an inventory, that is the basic source of data. Then that data will be utilized for every phase of assessment. We will be continuously utilizing that data in an iterative manner. So we have some LCA science comprehensiveness, attempt to cover all the attributes of natural environment. So it is quite obvious. So natural science, social and economic science, international convention, value choices. Why do an LCA? What is the need of it? So let's talk about it. Identify opportunities to improve environmental performance. So what the benefit we are going to get out of an LCA? To identify the opportunities, that what are the loopholes, what are the important elements which need to be revisited for the next design. In that case, we need to have an detailed assessment, and we will be identifying the opportunity, how to improve, at what phase we can improve. For example, talking about the energy utilization. So we are actually using that resource. From where we are getting that energy? Is there any other option that if we change the material and we reduce the need for the energy, is it possible? So we need to explore it. So this is how we are going to assess the performance. Then if there is a possibility, we can revisit our design, we can revisit our material utilization, resource extraction, and then we can come up with a new idea, with a new product, with a new service, and then it will be continuously improving it. We are also concerned about the disposal of the product, how we are going to dispose the product. It is also one of the important LCA element. Then if a product is constructed in such a manner that there is a lack of facility to dispose it properly, it must have a negative impact on the environment. We need to revisit it, we need to redesign it, we need to have something with better options for the disposal for that product. Then inform decision makers about the findings, and then select relevant indicators of environmental performance, marketing, for example eco label. So all these things are important when these are our benefits, these are our outcomes of the LCA which we have conducted. Then how to get it certified? We have a specific documentation series, that is ISO 14040, and LCA principles and framework is included in this set of certification. And then it also covers life cycle inventory, LCI, only study developed first by the ISO and then guiding documents are available for it. And then if you see ISO 14044, it is about the requirement and guidelines. Then 14047, it's about examples to impact assessment situation, different situations. Then critical review process and reviewer competencies is described in ISO 14071, and then 14048 describes the data documentation format. So here are the scope of ISO 14040. There are different phases of LCA. Please go through it. This is the phases of LCA. So goal and scope, we talked about it. We first of all need to define the goal and scope for which we are going to conduct this LCA for any product. Based on that, we will move forward, and then we will know the depth up to which we will be obtaining the data, and then how much accurate the data is. We must have authenticity about the data, because the data will be collected from different sources. It must have a validity so that it can be relied upon. Then life cycle inventory is important to be established, and then life cycle impact assessment to be conducted, and then interpretation, that is about the analysis, what data we have obtained. So I think goal and scope, what is the use of this report, and then to whom we are going to address, for whom we are making it, for what is the purpose of making this LCA report. So this is the phase 2 and 3. LCI is about the inventory phase. As much input and output data as possible is collected, can be presented in the report or kept private, such as if confidentiality agreement to be followed. Impact assessment phase is about conversion of data, inventory data, into impact potentials. Then we have an interpretation phase, in which continuously ongoing material and during assessment to help guide other phases, and discussion of inventory analysis and impact assessment results in LCA study. In an LCI study, only inventory needs to be discussed, And based on goal and scope of the study, it should be reflected in various uncertainties. And then LCA is based on a relative approach using a functional unit. Impacts are potential, we need to investigate them, and then there are some limitations. So please go through these limitations. Then we are concerned about the critical review, a necessary component of the comparative studies. Disclosed to the public, verifies process and consistency with the principle. So not an endorsement, does not verify or validate goals, can improve credibility of the study. So these are just critical reviews. These are not the endorsements. Not it does not verify or validate our goals, but it only improves the credibility of the study. So this is the summary features of an LCA systematic procedure. As we talked earlier, functional unit basis for comparisons, and amenable to data confidentiality, open to update based on new science and developing techniques, not overly restrictive. Then we have LCIA converted to LCI results to environmental issues based on characterization factor. So please go through these. And then this is the full list of ISO series, how to conduct ISO 14040. And then there are some select terms like what is process, elementary flow, product flow, intermediate flow, system boundary, impact category, and then characterization factor, allocations. So it's very important, please go through these terminologies. It's basics, and it must be well known to all of them, all of you. Please go through this presentation, and I hope it is not so difficult. uh, so thank you very much for today's lecture.